This is the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast, episode 632.
I program my home computer.
We have a server crash, 404 error, page not found, links aren't working, system is crashing, system is crashing, system is crashing.
Your old HTML website, barely alive. We have the technology. We have WordPress. A new website, better than it was before. Better, stronger, faster.
Hello, everybody. This is Adam Silvey, host of the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. All right, upcoming events. We have 4 things next weekend. The big one is WordCamp Asia. It's in Mumbai, India. That is April 9th, 10th, and 11th. That is the big one. I'm not going to be there, sorry. There's also WordCamp Vienna. That is on the 10th and 11th in Vienna. And there's 2 Campus Connect events. One of them is at the Ekuitas University of Indonesia in Bandung, April 9th, and the other one is in Croatia on April 13th. So there's a lot to choose from, all overseas in my perspective. I mean, nothing here in the US or North America, which is a bummer. So still trying to see what's happening with that. I reached out to Joe Simpson. Haven't heard back yet regarding Santa Clarita. That was on the schedule for May, but I think it's been pushed a bit. I'm waiting to hear back on that. So, all right, moving on. Segment 1 in the news. A couple of things to talk about here as well. And first and foremost, I asked actually a few weeks ago in regards to which betas, like how many numbers there were. Beta 5 was the latest I saw, but I found actually on the WordPress.org website under news/categories/releases, there is a historical listing of all releases. And this used to exist in the old site as well, but they updated it, restyled it. Looks really cool. I'll put a link in the show notes if you're curious to see all the releases all the way back. It's pretty cool. So, and I think beta 5 is the highest. That's what I saw in looking. I was hoping somebody would confirm that with me, but I just went and looked on my own. So there's that. Also in the news, Local by Flywheel, or LocalWP by Flywheel, has a new version 10, and it's pretty cool. It kind of popped up for me when I went to use it recently, the new version there. And there are some features that are pretty cool. Native cloud backups, no add-on required. You can now connect it to Google Drive and Dropbox for your backup settings kind of thing. Multi-machine harmony, so you can connect offline devices with more than one machine, laptop, desktop kind of thing, and whatnot. So there's a link in the show notes for that as well. And if you go to Local, you'll see it there. It's a free software. It's pretty cool. I use it all the time. All right. And lastly, in the news, over on April 1st, I believe, which we weren't sure if it's a joke or not. I don't think it's a joke, but CloudFlare announced M-, quote, the spiritual successor to WordPress that solves plugin security. A lot of people have chimed in on this. I haven't even looked at it yet. Haven't had a chance. As you remember, I'm getting over having shingles and a cold in that whole thing. So I'll look into it, see what's coming in the next few weeks or months when I get to it. I have a ton in the queue already, so we'll check that out. But I've heard some good things, I've heard some bad things, and just wanted to share that I did see it, and it's on my radar, so we'll go from there. All right. I think that's it in the news. Yeah, that's it in the news. All right, moving on to segment 2, the meat potatoes of this week's episode. But first, a word from this week's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Host Papa, and this week I want to talk about something I'm seeing more and more. People aren't just building websites anymore. They're building businesses, stores, courses, communities, sometimes all 3, and that's where Host Papa really shines. If you're launching an online store, their e-commerce hosting is built for exactly that. You can spin up a WooCommerce, PrestaShop, OpenCart, and more with just a few clicks. You get fast NVMe storage, performance-tuned servers, CDN support, and the kind of speed that keeps shoppers browsing instead of bouncing. Because we all know what happens when checkout is slow, people leave, carts get abandoned, and that's revenue walking out the door. Now layer in learning. Maybe you're selling a course, offering training, building a membership. Host Papa also supports LMS platforms for online education, training portals, and knowledge hubs. So you can create courses, manage students, track progress, and deliver content all from the same hosting foundation. So think about that combo. Sell a product, bundle a course, offer training, create a customer education hub. It's all possible, and it runs on infrastructure designed for performance and security. And of course, you're backed by SSL, automated backups, strong uptime, and their Papa Squad support team, ready to help whenever you need it 24/7. If you're thinking about launching a store, a course, or both, check out Host Papa. Build it, sell it, teach it, all in one place. Thanks again to Host Papa for sponsoring this week's episode. And we're back. Thanks again to Host Papa for sponsoring this week's episode. Really appreciate having you on board. All right, segment 2. This week's episode comes from an experience I've had actually a few times over the past, years. It's never really gone away. It has to do with proposals. And I've spoken about proposals in the past, but it's slightly different these days. And this is both normal proposals and what we call RFPs. For those who don't know, RFPs are requests for proposals, okay? And it got me thinking, not about specific projects, but about how complicated the proposal process has become. Not everywhere, not every company, but definitely I just see it a lot more out there in the ether. So recently, these come in all the time. We open the documents, first glance, it looks solid, lots of detail, lots of requirements, lots of structure. But the more I read these, the more confusing they kind of become. Some things contradict other things. Some requirements within the RFPs or even requests are specific, but others are vague. And a few parts feel like they're written by someone entirely different. So I'll be honest, my gut reaction is this. I think a lot of proposals, RFPs, or just inquiries are being written by AI. They're generated by somebody else. Totally fine. People want to expedite what they're thinking. They type it into an LLM and they get out something. But when requirements get generated without context or they get stitched together, it does create a lot of confusion instead of any clarity, in my opinion. And suddenly, something that just kind of, that should take a few hours to respond can turn into many days, if not weeks. Okay, so this week, that's a whole preamble, if you will. I want to talk about a few ways to not complicate the proposal process, whether you're issuing an RFP, responding to one, or just trying to decide if it's worth your time. All right, first and foremost, not all proposals or RFPs are created equal. This we know. There's definitely a spectrum here. On one end, you have a simple proposal. Client says, here's what we need. Here's roughly our budget. Here's the timeline. Clean and straightforward. Love these. These are great. Then you have the structured RFP. These can be helpful, very helpful. Clear scope, good evaluation criteria, a timeline, stakeholders. These are great when they're done well. And then there's the overly complex version. Long documents, unclear priorities, extreme contradictions, and sometimes requirements that don't actually align with each other at all. And again, I'm not saying that AI and the use of it is bad here. Well, maybe I am, but we're starting to see more of these that are just generated and expanded and stitched together. And then they sound thorough, but when you try to respond, they don't provide clarity. So with that, before anything else, I think it's good to decide if it's even worth responding. So before you do that, there's a major step here because some of these can be 30, 40, 50 pages. And sometimes these take real time, hours upon hours and days upon days. And for a small agency, that's a real investment and kind of a shotgun approach, right? So it's kind of, I think a pre-qualification checklist helps. Things like, is there a budget mentioned? Timeline? Do they understand what WordPress can do and can't do? Is the scope realistic? Is the conversation allowed? Does this align with what you do as the, builder of this, okay? Now, if those things aren't there, it might not be worth the effort at all, okay? And if you recall, I built a tool to help myself with this process, the RFP pre-qualifier. I talked about it back in episode 627. It's a quick way to evaluate if it makes sense for you, yourself, your own agency, or someone you work for to, if it's worth responding to. You can buy it. It's free. It's pay what you want, but it's back in episode 627. You can get the show notes on that episode and see the link there as well. And people took it. I had a couple dozen people download it. A couple people paid me for it. It was great. I'm not retiring, but just put it out there. A little effort, little coffee money. Okay. Anyway, I have here next up is, I think there's 6 things I want to talk about, 6 ways, if you will, of moving forward with this, okay, with proposals. So the first way is to not complicate the proposal process. It's to be clear about the goals, not just features. A lot of times, RFPs list requirements. Got to use Gutenberg, must be headless, must integrate with our CRM, must launch in 6 weeks. Okay, fine, but why? What problem are you actually trying to solve? Is it easier content updates, better performance, more conversions, less maintenance? There's a lot there. When agencies understand the goal, they can propose the right solution. When they see only features, you're guessing. And that's when proposals start to vary wildly. Clarity on the goal simplifies everything. Again, clarity on the goal simplifies everything. Okay, way number 2. This is how to avoid contradicting requirements. This is something I'm seeing more often lately. Requirements that just happen to blatantly contradict each other. A fixed budget, but undefined scope. Launch quickly, but a full redesign. Minimal maintenance, but heavy integrations. Enterprise expectations with the very small budget. And you see what I'm saying here? Individually, these things make sense, but combined, they create very, very, very impossible proposals. And it's just hard to convey that to a client. Agencies then either overprice to cover the risk or underscope to fit the constraints. Neither outcome is great. Removing these contradictions make proposals easier to write and easier to compare. Okay, way number 3. This is one that gets missed and clearly needs to be addressed early on, and that is to define what success actually looks like. What matters most here? Timeline? Is it budget, flexibility, performance, design? Now, without that context, agencies will prioritize different things. One agency might focus on UX, another on architecture, and maybe a third on scalability. Then when you compare proposals, they're all different. Not because anyone did it wrong, but because success wasn't defined by the client. So you ask that question. Just a few sentences around those priorities will simplify everything for everyone. Okay, way number 4, don't over-engineer the proposal process. Now, this one hits small agencies especially hard. Sometimes the proposal process itself becomes complicated. Long response templates, multiple pricing formats, technical diagrams, security questionnaires, several rounds of responses that are written back and forth via email. Sometimes that's necessary, sure, but oftentimes it can be overkill. And what happens then is many best agencies in class may opt out, not because they aren't qualified, but because the process is just too heavy. Simple process usually attracts better participation. All right, way number 5. Another thing worth mentioning is the use of templates. For standard proposals, templates are great. Many agencies, many small individual single person agencies will use them and have them. You have an intro, scope, timeline, pricing, next steps. It helps move quickly and it has consistency in your formatting. There's plenty of services out there, Panda Docs, Proposify, etc. But RFPs often break that mold. Each one is different format, different questions, different evaluation criteria, different pricing structures, right? So that means responding to an RFP almost takes more time. Well, always takes more time, not almost. It just does. More customizations, more thought, and that's okay. But it's another reason why the clarity up front matters so much. The clearer the RFP, the easier it is to tailor the response without reinventing everything. And finally, way number 6, having a conversation before the RFP process starts. You have to have a conversation if you can. The best proposals come from shared understanding. A discovery call, clarifying questions, collaboration. The worst proposals come from a document being sent out with no discussion and a very short deadline. Iteration improves everything, and many places may not allow for a conversation or very limited questions. But if it's reputable, if it's a big enough company, they will allow for at least those questions. That helps. But if you can have a phone call or a Zoom meeting or a Google Meet, whatever you want to call it, I can tell you from experience, having a conversation, at least one, will help solve many a problem that you just don't get in text, non-verbal communication. And there's no tone in that. So make sure you kind of really push for that if you can in a polite, professional manner. All right, so those are the ways I suggest you look at the whole proposal process in a broad stroke, okay? Because at the end of the day, a good proposal process should create clarity, not confusion, not unnecessary complexity. And in these days now with AI-generated requirements, this matters even more because it's even easier to create long documents from both ends, from the person submitting it to get the RFP to the company replying to it. But the length here doesn't equal clarity. Having a baseline to decide if it's worth responding is a great first step. Be clear about your goals, avoid contradictions, define success, keeps the process really simple. And if you're responding, use the tools, use the templates and those guidelines you have to protect your own time. It's valuable. Your time is valuable. The easier the process, the better the proposal. It's that simple. And it's the better the partnership will be if you win the proposal. So trust me on this. Don't overcomplicate it, okay? All right, moving on to segment 3, tip and tool of the week. This one, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, Local by Flywheel, version 10. It's pretty cool. I've been using it a lot. And what I love about Local by Flywheel these days, again, it's free. I tie it into my codex by OpenAI, and I can make changes via having a conversation and doing things. And I've been a whole bunch of vibe coding and some plugins and whatnot. It's pretty cool. It's been a lot of fun lately. So check it out, Local by Flywheel. The latest version is 10. Pretty neat. So a lot of updates there. All right, I'm going to wrap it up here. If you have any questions, go ahead, send it in via email, adam@KitchensinkWP.com, or use that speak pipe function on the website. If you want to support the show, you can become a Patreon. You can buy me a coffee, ways to do that. If you want to sponsor the show, like Host Papa, excuse me, my voice there. There's a form on the website. You can fill that out. I'll get right back to you. Thanks again to Host Papa for sponsoring this week's episode. Thanks for listening. See you next week. Now go out and do some awesome things with WordPress. All right. Bye-bye.